Francisco 49ers deep in the heart. Like Joe Montana in the corner, D. Clark. Garrison Hurst, stiff farm going 99. Don't get it twisted, one and all with prime time. John Taylor, Jerry Rice down the side.
It's the 49er Faithful UK show. So, how about them Cowboys? 4 of 6 wildcard weekend games are done, and the Niners now know our opponents. We will face the number 7 seeded Green Bay Packers on Saturday night, which is actually 1:15 a.m. Sunday morning UK time, after the Packers blew away the Cowboys, much to the hilarity of pretty much everyone. And to top it off, the Rams lost to the Lions in a tight game, so pretty much as good a weekend as could have been expected. I'm Gareth Ellis, and it's all smiles from Paul Hope.
What's up, Faithful?
And Lee Gowland.
Hey, guys.
So, no Nagy on the show tonight, but we will struggle on without him and hope we will see him in the next show. And the next show, we will do a proper look at the Niners-Packers game later in the week, but that's really where we've got to start on Super Wildcard Weekend with the Arlington beatdown. Paul, kick us off. How much of this is Packers good and how much of this is Cowboys bad?
Well, we talk about the fine margins in the NFL, Gareth. When the Packers won the toss, most teams elect to let the other team get the ball, so they get the ball in the second half. But I'd seen a stat where apparently Dallas are something like 10-0 when they win the toss, and I think LaFleur was right. He opted to get the ball. Jordan Love, who I haven't seen much of this year because the Packers haven't really been a playoff team, so I haven't been keeping an eye on them, marched him up the field. Then it was 7-0. Then it was 14-0. Then it was 21-0. Then it was 27-0. And I thought, there's no way that the Packers are going to collapse like the Chargers did last year. And I just think it set the tone. And I think it just shows sometimes, Gareth, being aggressive like LaFleur was in Dallas, because nobody gave him much of a chance going in. And you said it at the start of the show, how about them Cowboys? We hear it every year. It's their year. Dak Prescott was MVP. But you can't take nothing away from the way the Green Bay Packers played last night for me. And Jordan Love looked every bit as good, as advertised, as why he's been sat waiting for his chance behind Aaron Rodgers. What did you make of it, Lee? Do you think I've covered all bases there?
Well, I mean, you've given it your best shot, haven't you, mate? I loved it. I absolutely loved that. Watching the Cowboys get absolutely battered. It was brilliant to watch that. Is it a case of the Packers were so good or the Cowboys were so bad? I think it's a bit of a mix of both. I think the Cowboys did what they always do. The arse fell out of them. They lost the bottle. They bottled it, choked, whatever you want to call it. I think Paul's right about Matt LaFleur. I think he was right to be aggressive. I saw a similar stat to what Paul was talking about, and I think the stat was at home they were 2-8 when the opposing team scores first.
Yeah,
which is quite a poor record. It means they can't come from behind, which is quite surprising at home as well, because they've got a very, very good home record. So I don't know where those 2 losses came from. But yeah, I mean, that kind of set the tone for the game on the very first drive that the Packers had. You look at Dak Prescott, and I think it's quite right to question why on earth people thought he was MVP material when he bottles it like that. The memes of Jerry Jones in a uniform saying, "I'll handle this myself, boys." I thought that was great as well. Obviously, I mean, you know what I feel like about the Cowboys, about the Rams. So to me, I was over the moon watching that. Jordan Love, I was very impressed with. He's not going to get as much time in the pocket next week. I can guarantee you that. He's going to be pressured a lot more. So it's going to be interesting to see how he handles that. As far as the crowd is concerned, I don't think it's going to be that much different from last night. I think it probably is going to be the same level of crowd noise. So that shouldn't faze them. But when you look at the Packers, I think the Cowboys potentially made them look good last night. You look at the last 8-9 games the Packers have played, and they've played some pretty poor teams. They've played teams that got into the playoffs as well, but the teams that got into the playoffs haven't been particularly playing great. You had the Rams, you've got the Steelers, you've got the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs' record wasn't great this season. They've been misfiring all season. Yes, they went and beat the Dolphins, but they were playing at Arrowhead. So I think the quality of opposition in the back end of the season to get them to the point where they're scraped into the playoffs hasn't been great. And like I said, last night watching Dallas, I was very surprised at how poor they did actually look. They really struggled on defense. I think they have all season, to be honest. I think some, I'm going to call them lucky results. In fact, the offense has carried the team. They've got this much vaunted defense, and that's all people talk about. But I think it's the offense that have getting them into the playoffs because of the amount of points that they've been scoring. So, I think they've been caught out. I think they've come up against a team that can score just as many points as they can, and because they're missing one of their better pieces, Trevon Diggs, and they've been missing them pretty much all season as well. Last night was one game too far for them. But it was good to see the look on Micah Parsons' face as well.
Gotta give him this, Gareth. At least Dallas have figured out how to lose before the divisional round.
Yeah, they're just cutting out that extra travel, aren't they? Doing their bit. It was. I must admit, I didn't stay up and watch the game. I had a few raised eyebrows when I woke up and saw the result. The Cowboys I don't think they turned up. They looked poorly prepared, and they didn't look like they really had a game plan. It looked like they believe their own hype, don't they? I think they thought turning up was enough to put away the Packers. And the Packers came and set about their business from that first snap. And I think just surprised Dallas, smacked them in the face in the first quarter, and Dallas never recovered. And some of that, of course, is on Dak, because obviously the pick six and the interception are really what suddenly gets the game away from you. I mean, we'll touch on the Browns Texans later, but it was similar to that. Suddenly there's a pick six and the game's just got away from you, and then it just turns from bad to worse. And I think that just ultimately the final score flatters the Cowboys immensely. It makes it look like they weren't embarrassed when they, to be honest, absolutely were in their own house.
So I've got to say, when I was watching the first drive, in fact, the first couple of drives by the Packers, I was very happy that I turned around and said, the Packers are going to need to do something differently. They're going to have to run more than what they pass, because generally they pass a lot more. It's about a 40 to 60 split. So they pass 60% of the times, run 40. And they kind of did exactly what I said. They tried to run on them a lot more than what they were passing initially. Mind you, I also said what they have to do is make sure that they didn't run towards DeMarcus Lawrence. And 2 out of the very first 3 runs went straight into DeMarcus Lawrence. But then they kind of got the idea and they ran away from him. And I think that was the right call. So run on the Dallas Cowboys, and then that opened up the passing lanes. And like I said, I was very impressed with Jordan Love. I thought some of the passes he was making were beautiful. They were, I would say, into reasonably tight windows, because he was just getting them over the defender, and it was just dropping very nicely into the receiver's hands. He didn't make the receivers do too much to actually make the catch. So I think that was good from that perspective. I know we're not going to look ahead to next week's game too much, but I'm just going to say it's 2 very good young quarterbacks. And it's exciting for the league, not just ourselves, but for the neutral. I think they'll watch that game just to watch the 2 quarterbacks.
I mean, Dallas did come into this season, Gareth, very bullish, wanting to make history. And they have made history, because they're the first number 2 seed to lose to a number 7 seed. And Brett Sinclair, you're probably going to chuckle at this, but yes, I have a friend who's a Cowboys fan, my friend Chris. He's normally quite level-headed, apart from when they're playing well. And he sent me a text this morning, Gareth. Just awful. Our run defence was missing. We weren't covering anyone. They were wide open all game. And it's the worst I've seen us play in years, which is weird considering the season we had. And I texted him back with the meme that Lee mentioned, with Jerry Jones putting the helmet on, saying, "That's it, lads. I'm going in." And, it's been great to see the atmosphere on the group, like you, Gareth. I watched the first half of the game and then it was done. So I kind of didn't really bother with the second half, and I've seen the Discord chat, I've seen the tweets, and you said it better than anyone to start the show. The Cowboys losing, the Rams losing. The lad who lives across the road, Gary, Rams fan, I haven't seen him in about 18 months, and this morning I'm going to work and there he is. I'm like, "Morning, mate." He was like, "I already know the score, it's alright." I was like, I wasn't going to say anything. Big smile on my face. But yeah, it was definitely strange, I think, given the fact that, like you said, there were 20 points up at half time. You just don't see that in the playoffs unless you're a Chargers fan. So,
Yeah, I think Dallas just had no answer and just looked poorly prepared. And I think, well, we're recording this Monday. I'm surprised McCarthy's still there. I know we know
Yeah.
Jerry Jones doesn't do the knee-jerk reactions, but I think McCarthy and probably Quinn are both done at Dallas. I don't know how you come back from that and bring potentially the locker room and certainly the fan base with you to have another crack next season and instill any belief. Do you think they're both out the door?
Without a shadow of a doubt, and like you, I'm absolutely gobsmacked that he wasn't fired at the end of the game because it was such an embarrassing defeat, and that's what it was.
Home.
I mean, I said on Twitter, this game is definitely a game where you can use the word shellacking. It was a bloody good shellacking, and I am very surprised Jerry Jones didn't go into the post game conference and we've relieved Mike McCarthy of his duties. He's out of here because he kind of said that at the start of the season. It'll depend on how we play and how far we go as to whether or not we're going to have a change of coach next season. He's got to be out the door.
I know we're a 49ers podcast, Gareth, but I did see the tweets this morning saying, how's Belichick not already marching with his Dallas Cowboys hoodie sleeves cut off? And like you said, Lee, where did they go? They came into this season, Jerry Jones was very clear, we need to have a playoff run. And do the players buy back in, Gareth? I mean,
win a playoff game.
We've seen this, there was all the talk with Harbaugh, then we went to Shanahan, and sometimes you think, like you said, Lee, it was men against boys, and the Green Bay Packers were supposed to be 7.5 underdogs. They're a young team. They're not supposed to go into Jerry World and put on that performance. I mean, Love finished 16 of 21, 272 yards, 3 touchdowns. He would have had a perfect passer rating. They sat him, but then when the Cowboys looked like they were making somewhat of a comeback, they put him back in, and I think he had a couple of throws go amiss. But yeah, you're right, Lee. I did see, I think David Lombardi tweeted out the battle of the heavyweights next week, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy. And if you'd said that at the start of the season, a lot of people might have laughed at you, but the graph that he shared, they're the two standout quarterbacks. So like you said, Lee, it's going to be great for the league for years to come.
Oh, well, so while I don't want to disagree with you there, obviously there was another game on Saturday night where the quarterback played absolutely out of his skin, and that's CJ Stroud. Some of the throws he was making were unbelievable. It is an exciting time again. They keep on saying this, where it's passing over, it's passing from the old guard to the new guard, the young talent, and that kind of happened when Mahomes, Josh Allen came in. But now you look at the likes of Purdy, Jordan Love, CJ Stroud, they all look like long-term franchise quarterbacks. So it's very exciting. It almost feels as though the whole league, quarterback play-wise, is going up. It's increasing. It's getting higher, and it can only be a good thing for the NFL fan.
And you mean all those people who laughed at us when we wanted to go younger at the quarterback position? So you think Kyle Shanahan was onto something with the trade for a certain player that the Dallas Cowboy fans were crying out for, Gareth? I saw plenty of tweets asking for number 15 to come on instead of the MVP.
Yeah, well, what have you got when you're that much in a hole in the third quarter? You may as well try and get something out of the game, mightn't you? Something to spark it up. But yeah, I think it's an exciting time. There has been I think a bit of a drop off where we saw the old guard retire, and obviously Brady's come out and said that there's a lot of mediocrity in the league. I think there's been a lot of quarterback injuries this year. There certainly has been, I think, in the last few years, but there is potentially, if certainly a few teams in the AFC, perhaps if the Chargers can get a decent coach and Justin Herbert is regularly.
I honestly thought you were going to say a quarterback there.
Well, coach and quarterback, obviously. If the Chargers can sort it out, there could well be some regular AFC matchups. And yeah, it could be, we were talking about Purdy versus Hurts. Maybe it's Purdy, Love, and Hurts in the NFC. And Dak, obviously. Maybe facing off in divisionals and wildcards and championship games for the next decade. We could be on the edge of an exciting time, couldn't we? But I think we've been there before, and there's been a few false storms, not necessarily from us, but that idea of suddenly a crop of quarterbacks being on good teams and seeing those rematches in the postseason year after year after year, as we've seen perhaps a few years ago. Exciting. Anything else? I think we should talk about the Texans game as well. But anything on the Packers Cowboys to revel in while we get the opportunity? I'm a bit disappointed with the Packers, to be fair, because it's our job to knock out the Cowboys, and they've robbed us of that simple pleasure this year, and we should take our revenge next weekend.
So it's probably is a good time to answer Alex Simpson's question, even though we haven't talked about the Detroit Lions. I think it was more geared towards, obviously, the Packers-Cowboys game. I just need to find a copy of the question now. You just talk amongst
elevator
yourselves
music.
While
Yeah,
Lee looking for the question, all I wanted to say, Gareth, is for 49 faithful UK fans, if you've got your bingo card out there, you can tick off Dak Prescott turnover in the playoffs, and there's your moments, because we've talked about the Dallas Cowboys giving us all these moments, and as soon as he threw that and Alexander just jumped the route, the pick six, I've got to say I do love a pick six, and it was quite nice to see that one ran back home.
Yeah, I think Andrew was quite confused about why I was screaming so much when the Green Bay Packers kept on picking Dak Prescott off.
Did she not say to you what Tracy said to me? The 49ers are not playing this week, Paul. Why are you watching football? Why are you cheering so excitedly? And isn't that your friend's team, the Dallas Cowboys? I was like, Tracy, sit down. We have to have a conversation.
Yeah, go watch Love Island. Right, question for the pod boys of the 49er Faithful UK. Would you rather have seen the Lions and Cowboys beat each other up next week and not see the Lions have an easier matchup this week? So obviously, if the Cowboys had won that game, then who we'd likely to play? We'd have likely to been playing either the Bucks or the Eagles. See, I don't think the Lions and Cowboys would have been a particularly physical game, if I'm understanding the question right. If we'd rather have watched the Lions Cowboys beat each other up next week, because I think the Lions defense is still suspect. I think they're great on offense, even though they only scored 24 points. Yeah. I think they've got a really good offense as long as Jared Goff has time in the pocket, which again I was quite happy I said that on the preview show. Give him time in the pocket, and he's a very, very good quarterback indeed. You look at the matchup between Stafford and Goff, which was obviously, I wouldn't say it was a needle matchup, because it wasn't between them two, it was between the teams that originally drafted them, but there wasn't much in it. They both ended up with 120 point whatever passer rating when in a clean pocket. So there was two very good quarterbacks on display there. I don't particularly think the Lions would have beaten up on the Cowboys, and in the same vein, I don't think the Cowboys would have particularly beaten up on the Lions either. In fact, I think had the Cowboys come up against the Lions, it's you can argue that they've taken a bigger beating against the Lions in Detroit than what they took against the Packers in their own stadium. What do you think? Do you agree? Disagree? Would you want to see us play the Lions in the NFC Championship game if we make it there?
We still could.
Oh yeah, we still could.
I'm not, but I would have thought Lions Dallas might have been an interesting matchup. Obviously, the Lions would have had to have gone there, and there was that tight game with the strange designated player call and the refs botch up at only 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I think that might have added a little bit of extra something to the game. But so as long as they're not easy games, I think the Packers have potentially had a fairly easy game, whereas the Lions had to go all the way to the end. I would have preferred to see the Packers Cowboys be a bit of a closer game.
So I think the Packers ended up picking up a couple of injuries, significant injuries to top players. And as well as that, obviously, they're going to have a day sorry, a day less than us. And they're going to have a lot less than us because we've had 3 weeks off. So we're going to be fresh. They're going to have to travel yet again. So they'll go from Dallas up to Green Bay up to San Francisco, Santa Clara, if you want to be technical about it. And they're going to be worn down. They've already got quite an injury list anyway. They're missing the all-star left tackle Bakhtiari.
Easy for you to say. I'm glad you mentioned that. I was not attempting that.
Well, they're missing him. He's on IR.
Bakhtiari.
Yeah, Bakhtiari. And they are getting pieces back.
The offensive line looked good last night, though, didn't it, Lee? Even though they're missing him, the offensive line did look good. And Micah Parsons is supposed to be this superstar. Didn't do much, did he, really?
Yeah, I mean, no. Two of the games over the weekend, I was very impressed with the offensive line of the Green Bay Packers and the offensive line of the Houston Texans. They seem to be able to give their quarterbacks as much time in the pocket as they wanted. But again, like I said, that might be different coming up against San Francisco. The Browns were very disappointing indeed. Not just on offense, which we'll get to later, because I really enjoyed watching Joe Flacco just completely crumble, purely because of 2012, of course. But I was really disappointed with them defensively as well. They just didn't seem to show up. They didn't seem to generate the pressure that they've done previous weeks. And again, you look at that franchise and you've got to ask, did they choke? Did they bottle it? Was the pressure too much that they're finally getting into the playoffs and that's it? They've just choked straight away.
Well, I think you've wandered straight into the Texans.
I was going to say, you've not answered Alex's question. But,
go on, answer Alex's question, then we'll go on to Texans Browns, because that was fun.
I think his logic. Yeah, go on, sorry, Lee.
So I was going to say, no, you go ahead. I think I answered it. I can't remember.
I was going to say, I think his logic was, it looked like Gareth said, it was an easier game for the Packers, and at this stage of the season, you're looking at everything in your advantage. But my good friend Andy, who was with you guys in the Super Bowl meetup last year, Lions fan, he's absolutely giddy for a Niners Lions NFC Championship game. I think I wouldn't have changed to answer Alex's question. I'm glad the way the outcome has gone the way it's gone, because I don't think the Lions are in for an easy game the next round, because if the Bucks win, I think they're underdogs, nothing to prove. And if the Eagles win, I think they've got a lot to prove. So that could be a harder matchup than what he's given credit for. But I can understand the logic, because there was a lot of 49ers fans celebrating the Rams Cowboys going out, and I think he was just playing a bit of devil's advocate. So I don't know whether that answers your question, Alec, but we've tried our best, buddy. So we appreciate the feedback. What about you, Gareth, before we move on to the other games?
Didn't I answer it? I think I did.
Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, I think
you weren't paying attention.
Yeah. You'd have preferred the Lions because they had a much harder game, which went all the way to the end.
Yeah.
And the Packers.
That's all I would put. I'm not bothered about the opponent. I don't think you can control it. It's fun to have a think about who would you rather play, but ultimately I'll take whoever we get. So, but yeah, so, Niners, Packers. That'll be good for the next show to look forward to.
Are we going to tick that off as actually talking about the Lions Rams game?
You want to add something? That's what you're saying. Yes. Go on,
I want to add a stat that I found
very
amusing.
Go on then.
Very amusing indeed. So last night was the very first time a Lions fan has been able to text another Lions fan and say, we won a playoff game. It's the very first text that has ever been sent.
Our text is Niners friend. Did you see Dan Campbell's speech in the locker room afterwards?
No, missed that.
So the GM of the Lions has had a bit of a storybook fairy tale getting to where he is, but that wasn't the bit what I was getting to. And they gave about a 5-minute interlude about this GM. He was a game ball, and then he said, Dan Campbell comes back and says, I've got another game ball, and he just looks at Jared Goff and he says, you'll effing do for Detroit. And he hands him the game ball and the whole room erupts. And to be fair, I was pleased for Goff because of obviously the way he left the Rams. And you said it well, Lee. Goff is a serviceable quarterback if they play it with strength. They give him time in the pocket. If they play it a play action, they've given them some weapons. And that game without any emotion was highly enjoyable. I mean, the last quarter, it could have gone either way, and it looked like at one point Stafford was cooking, and the fact that it came down to 1 point is unbelievable. So I think it was a close game. It was always nice to see McVay looking a little bit salty on the sidelines and whinging on, but yeah, like you said, Lee, good start that. First text ever for a Detroit Lions fan. I like it.
So I thought it was an interesting answer to a question that Matthew Stafford gave. So the question he was asked was, "Are you happy for Detroit?" After the game. I mean, all things aside, obviously you've just been knocked out of the playoffs, but because of your history, the team that drafted you, are you happy for Detroit? The answer he gave was, "Well, I'm happy for the players," which suggests he couldn't give a toss about the fans, the team, or anything like that. It was just, "I'm happy for the players."
Yeah.
So it was an interesting answer. A little bit bitter there,
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you've just been knocked out of a tournament, haven't you? Effectively. So I didn't really pay a lot of attention to this game. I saw the result, obviously. I watched the quick highlights. I think the only thing I've picked up on it was some criticism from McVay for punting deep in the fourth quarter when he was basically just about in Detroit's territory. And it does seem to be that some of that loss is on McVay for a bit of poor clock management, not having the timeouts, and bottling it a bit when it came to punting at the end. Did either of you guys pick up on that? Because like I say, that's second-hand information for me.
Yeah, so I thought it was not as clock management, but as play calling left a lot to be desired. It was one of those situations where he thought, well, they could probably get this, that they don't really need to punt it. It's at such a stage of the game, you need to be aggressive in the playoffs. But I can't believe I'm going to say this. To be fair to the Rams, they were absolutely robbed by the officials at the end. There was a holding, there was a pass interference, and there was a late hit on a defenseless receiver. All in the same play. All within of the space of a couple of seconds, and it wasn't called.
I'm sure they've got huge sympathy from Saints fans for that.
What did you think, Lee, of him not going for it before the half? Because our good friend Andy Hodgson, remember, dropped that stat. If you score before half time, you've got a good chance of winning the game. And they had the ball, and it just seemed to be that, like, I know you're not going to take a chance of a Hail Mary, but he seemed quite happy to just let the clock run out because he was getting the ball for the second half. Yeah. And I just thought, maybe, does that send a message? I just wanted your opinion.
So I was quite surprised because Sean McVay's team's got a record similar to what Shanahan had few seasons ago, that if he's behind at the half, he doesn't come back, and the vast majority of times he loses. So yeah, I was surprised. I thought he might have been a little bit more aggressive then, because at least then, if he was aggressive then, he still had a whole half to correct that.
And he was due to get the ball back anyway.
Exactly.
So,
but that might have been at the back of his mind as well, because Shanahan does that. If we're due to get the ball back, he's not as aggressive as if we aren't going to get the ball back, because he's desperate to put those points on the board before the opposition get the ball.
Yeah, true.
Anything else on the Lions Rams before we finally?
One thing, I did say it was going to be a 1 point game.
Did you?
Oh. I did, yeah.
I
did say the Rams would win. Yeah,
I
said 28-27.
It was a nice, fun game, though. That doesn't matter for the score prediction. So,
Well, I'm glad it doesn't, because I wouldn't have even gotten 2 points. I got the wrong winner, and I was, even though I was very, very close, I was still enough out not to get even 2 points per score.
9 points, yeah. So, speaking of the predictions, I was going to call out Nagy on this one, because he did call the Texans win at the Browns. I think he said the Texans are going to have a party atmosphere. They're just going to go out and play. And if the Browns aren't ready for that, they're going to get turned over. Surprised to see that result come in as well. Obviously, the couple of two pick sixes, I think 4 or 5 snaps, that's quite a swing on the game.
Yeah.
But I think the question here is, can Texans win another one? Can they win another 2?
So if I'm right, the Texans now have to go into Baltimore. And I think they've got the quarterback who can cause them problems.
It's not set, I think, until... Because obviously if the Steelers, I think, turn over the Bills...
That's right, you're right.
Which it is unlikely.
Highly unlikely. But then again, I think we were sat here Friday night. Well, no, we didn't say it was highly unlikely that the Packers could do it. we did all go for a Cowboys win. I do recall saying, I hope the Packers can do it, but I didn't really think they could. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the Steelers, it is highly unlikely. I would say it's more unlikely than the Packers beating the Cowboys.
But yeah, so anyway, Texans Browns.
Yeah.
Well,
You've mentioned CJ Stroud. Man,
Yeah.
at the moment, he's been quite some fun, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And obviously, hats off to D'Amico for turning that franchise around about 3 years earlier than expected.
Yeah, CJ Stroud, he's very impressive for a rookie. The touch he can put on the ball is unbelievable. His O-line, I think he needs to, once he gets proper money behind him, once he's a veteran and he's got that first proper contract signed, not his rookie contract, I think he needs to buy his O-line some luxury gifts there, because the O-line was impressive to watch. Very impressive. And the thing that was stuck at the back of my mind is, when I've watched Baltimore play, I think we can pressure Lamar Jackson. I don't think we're going to have the same game as we had against them on Christmas Day / Boxing Day morning. I think we can get pressure there. When I was watching the Texans last night, I thought, my God, how are we going to get pressure there? They've gone up against the Cleveland Browns, who've been destroying quarterbacks all year long, and they made them look ordinary. And I'm not so sure it's just the Cleveland Browns choking. I think they did such a good job. It was the O-line that basically led the win for them. And CJ Stroud just needed to stand there and pick out whichever receiver he wanted, because he had plenty of time to do that.
So at this point, Gareth, going to go down a Gowland-shaped rabbit hole. Chicago Bears fans turn away because you could have had CJ Stroud, but your general manager decided to trade away that pick, stick with Justin Fields, and we all get flack for us taking a gamble on Trey Lance. And you're right, Lee. When I was watching that game, I think people forget the Browns went into the lead, Gareth. It looked like the Browns were going to upset the party. I was the same page as Najee. I thought the Texans would win. And it shows the coaching job D'Amico Ryans has done. The fact that they didn't panic. And like you said, Lee, he put the ball in the hands of his young superstar. And I was impressed. Yeah, the pick sixes, though, Gareth, they definitely turned the game on its head. I mean, that one where it looked like he was about to get sacked and he just threw it up in the air like an alley-oop. What was he doing in the playoffs? I mean, there was all this talk, Lee, of Flacco being elite and maybe his team's going to pick him up. Like you said, all Niners fans enjoyed seeing him collapse. And it couldn't have happened to a nicer team after what happened to us earlier in the season. And a lot of the Browns fans were adamant this was their match, the Super Bowl. But I thoroughly enjoyed that game on Saturday. And so did Jay Peplow, who was texting me just as excitable as he was when he watches the Niners game, Gareth. So that was a good highlight to my Saturday night.
Yeah, Texans are a dangerous team. I don't think anyone's going to face them. And I think there's a little bit of similarity, perhaps, between them and the Packers, both in the nature of their win and the nature of the opponents. That I think, again, the Browns just underestimated. They thought, we'll turn up and we'll smother their offense and we'll grind out a win, as has been our game plan. And I think they looked a bit shell-shocked in the same way that the Cowboys did. They seem to be quite similar games. And I don't think the Ravens will be really relishing looking forward to the Texans. Obviously, the Texans now have to go on the road, but they will potentially have 2 days extra. Sorry, not on the Rams, would they? So not on the Ravens, because the Ravens haven't played. So I'm going to stop there before I embarrass myself further.
Well, we'll just
it's like we make it up as we go along, and then I stop myself before I fell headlong into that rabbit hole.
Well, I'll rescue you, Gareth. We'll put to bed the rumours that Najee Carrara isn't on the show tonight because he's after a Jimmy Ward jersey. And I know we give Najee a lot of banter about Jimmy Ward, but it was nice to see the Texans defence coming up and making some plays. I don't think any of us had 45-14 though, Lee. I mean, like I said, the Browns went 2 scores up, and the way they came back. I was very impressed with Nico Collins, as much as CJ Stroud gets a lot of the credit. And I can't remember that other kid's name, number 9, who just did the Roadrunner. Stroud just threw him the ball, and he seemed to have 70 yards to take at the house, and he just ran in a straight line. And I thought, wow, this Cleveland Browns defense is supposed to be, like you have said, supposed to be scary. And maybe it was just a game too far. Maybe they didn't come into this with the favourite tag sitting heavy. Because if you think with the Browns, they're not normally favoured going into games. But I've seen a lot of talk about Stefanski being Coach of the Year, very similar to Dak Prescott being MVP. For me, these are the games that cement those legacies. And if you're going to be Coach of the Year, you need to do something in the playoffs. If you're going to be the league MVP, you need to put your team on your back. But what do I know on this side of the pond, Gareth? What do I know?
So technically, both MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, and Coach of the Year all end on the regular season. Yeah. So the playoffs are not supposed to count. But we all know the playoffs count. They're just not supposed to.
But you're right, Lee. You talked about the pass rush, and it was interesting to see. Maybe these young quarterbacks are shown what they can do when you give them time to adapt.
Yeah, exciting times. The last game, Dolphins Chiefs, probably the least interesting game of the weekend so far.
So I'm
Didn't
going to
really
admit
take much from this.
I didn't see a single snap in that game. It's the only one I haven't watched yet.
So
it's nice if you like your cold weather field goals.
Yeah, I was going to say that Buckner's technique for the field goal was very interesting. He kind of did like a swing and then planted his knee after he kicked it. I'm surprised you chaps haven't seen Carl Juszczyk all over social media showing his good lady the love because she made another one with those lovely jackets, which is great to see the Niners fans. We could always make something about us when there's nothing for us to talk about. I wanted to mention, but you haven't watched it. So I don't know if you've seen the clip about Mahomes going helmet to helmet, and a big part of his helmet comes off because of the freezing cold and the crack. And you talk about the NFL being stickler for rules. Well, they just let him go at the sideline, change his helmet. There was no timeout. There was no flag on the play. And this is where I think people think, oh, there's teams being favoured. Now, it's play safety. His helmet's cracked in bits. You've got to let him change his helmet. But the Dolphins looked poor. The cold weather could have played a part in it. Tua didn't look nowhere near as good. He's another one, Lee, that was in talk of MVP. I think Tyreek Hill wanted it more than anybody else on the Dolphins team. But the Chiefs were very efficient, is what I would say, Gareth, and they never looked in any danger. Although Kelsey did not look anything like the Kelsey that I know. He was dropping passes, and maybe we're coming to the end of that. Maybe, the weather could play a part, but it wasn't the Kelsey that I'm used to seeing anyway.
I think no one's scared at the Chiefs, but that you can't underestimate Mahomes.
That's right. There's still that little bit of fear in the back of your mind, thinking you know what they're capable of if everything's clicking into place. But to be fair, Najee did say that was going to be a low-scoring, reasonably close game, and he got that one right. I think, I echo what Paul said. I think Kelsey over the last few games, not just the game that I didn't bother watching at the weekend, I think over the last few games he hasn't particularly looked sharp. He hasn't looked interested. It could be the Taylor Swift effect. Who knows? But to be honest, I don't care, because the Chiefs are another team I'd love us to batter in the Super Bowl. It can be the Ravens, it can be the Chiefs. I don't care who it is, to be honest. It can be any of the remaining teams in the FC. As long as we batter them and bring home number 6, I do not care.
Yeah.
So Ryans has gone further than McDaniels in the playoffs. I said on the last show, Gareth, there's a few Dolphins fans bubbling away in the background, a little bit irritable. I think that, similar to Dallas, they haven't won in the playoffs yet again. So the talk goes back to next year. But I said to you two chaps off air, I was out on visits today on my job. It was -1 on my phone. It was about -5, -6 wind chill. And I thought, how on earth did they play that game on Saturday? Because I think it was -35 wind chill at one point. But it wasn't a game for the ages, Lee. It wasn't a Chiefs-Bills playoff game. But it's football and it's playoff football. So I was watching.
Yeah, so I can understand exactly what you mean, Paul. Because I went out for a run just after lunch today, and it was -7 wind chill, and I went out in a pair of shorts rather than my thermal jogging bottoms.
Well, luckily, my boss had authorised me to wear me Niners thermal bobble hat, so I did have a couple of interesting chats with some of the posties about American rugby, as one of them called it, and he asked who the Buffalo Bulls were playing, because he'd seen something about the snow game. So the NFL bringing people together all around the UK.
Yeah, I think the Dolphins got a bit of a beating. I think there are potentially some questions. I think people have talked about McDaniel, and I think the Lions win. I saw that the Dolphins haven't won a playoff game this millennium, and they are now the only team in American sports to have not won some sort of playoff game in a year beginning with 2. So that's quite a record from the Dolphins. I think we forget just how poor they've been for how long, and those fans are, including a friend of mine. I've held off giving him a text. I'm going to let him digest it for a bit. But you do wonder whether short-tempered owners, whether McDaniel might be one of the first firings out of the new Shanahan tree, which is sort of taking over the league, because I don't think anyone's actually been fired yet. And I think Salah's probably safe. And I'm going to stick my neck out and say D'Amico Ryans is probably going to be safe as well. So, yeah, it would be sad to see. But I'd
be very surprised if he gets fired this quickly. I'd be very surprised. And I think he'll have at least another season.
Well, he's done the Gareth Ellis curse now, because Gareth Ellis called the Arthur Smith sacking before anyone else.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, to hear first.
That's it.
Or was it not me that cursed it by saying, "Oh no, they've already said that he's coming back next year"?
Yeah, bit of both. But Andy Davies from across the pod, he's a Dolphins fan, and he messaged me at dinner time and was like, "Seems wear out. Do you want to come in and talk about the Packers game end of the week?" So I'm going to have to give him a few days to calm down, because, like you said, he was one of the ones, Gareth, that was like, I need to see my Dolphins win a playoff. He was that convinced that it was going to happen. He said whoever scored the winning touchdown, he was buying their jersey, and he didn't care who it was. So he saved some money, and he has to wait till next year now.
Yeah. Well, there we go. They've saved him a bit of cash. So, talking of leavings, one person who has definitely gone is Adam Peters from the Niners office, and gone to the Commanders to be their new general manager. I think everyone knows this is going to be quite a big loss. I think it remains to be seen quite how big, and I don't think any of us know quite how many of our good draftings and how much of the work in some of the successful trades we've had, how much is John Lynch and how much has been Peters. Not taking away anything from Lynch as the stated GM, but I think we know there's more to it. There's more of a teamwork than it being just one guy in an office with a phone. Any of you guys got insight into Peters' departure from the Niners?
I think it's going to be a lot bigger loss than what people are currently thinking it is. When you look, so Adam Peters, I think he came in, was it the second or third season? So I think the first two or three drafts were all down to Lynch, but then he brought Peters in, and when you look at the quality that we've getting through the drafts, a lot of the later years has been better than the early years. Although he did have, obviously, brought up, he picked George Kittle, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, a few others like that. But I think Adam Peters is very underestimated, which is why it's going to be a big loss. I kind of had hoped that the 49ers could have offered him the GM role, because that was kind of John Lynch had getting that promotion. But I think it's a case if you've got a promotion to, I think it was president of player personnel, something like that. But he still kept hold of the GM title. Now, if that GM title was free, I think the 49ers could have offered that to Adam Peters, as long as it was a proper role, a real role. But we didn't do it. He's gone, and we'll soon find out next year what our draft class looks like, and see how they perform, and whether or not it was Lynch or Adam Peters.
What was interesting, Gareth, is if you think back to last year, Peters turned down the chance for Arizona and Tennessee. He turned down the chance to go and be interviewed, and its new title, Lee, is the President of Football Operations. So I think the talk last year, Gareth, was John Lynch was going to move upstairs and Peters was going to slot in. Now, whether Peters has got fed up, Lee, of waiting, because there was the talk of Lynch going to be the front of the Amazon TV deal, make a lot of money. But I think Lynch is a football man at heart, Gareth, and I think he's thinking, do you know what, the TV money will still be there, and maybe he's had cold feet, he's had second thoughts. I have seen some tweets, Lee, from like Lombardi and all the rest of them trying to downplay Peters' move and saying that they were preparing for it behind the scenes, and there's been other people in the coaching tree taking the responsibilities, and we might see a promotion from within. But it was interesting, especially because Washington already had a general manager that they took from us last year. So God knows what Maycock thought when he got the tweet to say, "We've hired Adam Peters." whether they give him the role of president of football at Washington. But it seems that obviously the new owners at Washington are coming in, they're putting the right people in place. It'll be interesting to see who Peters chooses for his head coach and then seeing what happens moving forward. But I always try and be optimistic, Gareth, but it's what happens when you're a good team. Your coaching staff gets raided. Like you've said there, we haven't seen anyone fired yet from the Shanahan coaching tree, but it's interesting to see all these teams around the league with the Niners connections. It's a bit strange for me.
Yeah. So that leads us into potentially losing someone else. Steve Wilkes has, I think, been getting interviews and could well be getting more, I think, with some of the openings that are coming up, and depending on how he does in the next 1, 2, 3 games. It just made me think there whether he might be a potential candidate at Washington in the next week or so as well. Do you think Wilkes is going to go? We talked about this, I think, one or two shows ago. I didn't think he would, but he's been getting that head coaching interest.
Yeah. I actually agree with your original opinion on that. I don't think he will go. I don't think anybody will actually offer him a job. I think they're going through the process. Obviously, the Art Rooney rule, where they have to interview so many coaches. I don't think he'll get it.
I don't think he's the hot name. I think Ben Johnson seems to be the favoured one. He seems to be one getting all interviews. And like what Lee said, Gareth, they have to go through a process. And you see all these names. I mean, he's been a head coach before. It's always interesting when you're the fan of a team like the Niners in the playoffs and the teams that are out. We had it when we were waiting for the Falcons run to end and we wanted Shanahan. So you kind of think, can you not wait until after the Super Bowl? But I suppose we were on an off week. I saw a few people frustrated that Wilkes was flying off and having interviews rather than preparing. But I think Shanahan gave a press conference, Gareth, that said as soon as we know who we're facing and we now know it's the Packers, it's going to be 24/7, everyone back in the building, and we're going to be focusing on that one. But, I mean, be sorry to see him go, but there's a few people, Lee. Richard Sherman could come back home. Personally, I think that's a bit too soon to bring Sherman in as a defensive coordinator, but it's 49ers Twitter. What do you expect?
Well, we seem to have just kept things moving throughout all these coaching losses. We worried about losing Salah, and then that disappeared as soon as we had Ryans, and we worried about losing Ryans, and Wilkes, I think, has been a good replacement for him. Maybe he hasn't been quite the same defense, but it's been good. So there's something there in the way the organisation copes with these changes. I think perhaps maybe not a good example is obviously Philadelphia, where they lose their offensive and defensive coordinators in the same season, and they don't look like the same team they were last year on either side of the ball, and seem to be a little bit dysfunctional now. And we haven't been having that. I don't think we've missed a beat through any of the coaching changes that we've had. And maybe I think Steve Wilkes was the first outside hire, because obviously Ryans had been with the organisation before. Maybe the expectation always was, look, we get these guys in, our defence is so good, they're going to get jobs straight away. Maybe there is somebody else in the building who just needed another year behind a mentor like Steve Wilkes, and we'll have one of these unknowns come forward again. Because I'm fairly confident we haven't been let down so far.
Yeah, I just can't put my finger on who that person within the organisation might be. Don't know if Gareth has dropped off there, but he's definitely frozen like he has the last couple of episodes.
He's competing for the screenshot of this week's episode. What did such and such said? Gareth put his front foot forwardly.
He has. If Steve Wilkes goes, Steve Wilkes goes, to be honest. I feel as though we haven't been as aggressive this year on defence, which is quite surprising considering the amount we've been blitzing. But what I mean by that is it's just the whole team just don't look as what would be the word for it? They're just not in everybody's face like they were. They do step back quite a bit. They're not up in your face all the time.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, and when Wilkes first came in, I think obviously we went on that 5-game unbeaten run to start the season, and then we hit the skids for 3 games. And when that happened, you kind of everybody started questioning Wilkes, which was fair enough because the defence, some of the play calling was questionable, to say the least. So if he goes, he goes. I agree. We're probably just going to bring somebody else in who'll seamlessly come in and run that defence. I just hope it looks more like a Demeco Ryans, Robert Salah defence than a Steve Wilkes defence, because I enjoyed watching their defences a lot better.
Yeah, I'm back. Apologies for the technicals. So, I think we've probably covered everything. We might have a little bit of UK faithful news regarding a potential event in Leeds.
Yeah, so we definitely have some UK faithful news. So obviously, if we win the game on Saturday against the Green Bay Packers, there will be a meet-up in Leeds. It'll be in Leeds City Centre. It will not be Elland Road. So you use that information however you want. Book some refundable hotels. So if we do happen to get beat by the Packers on Saturday night, you don't lose any money. But obviously that game is going to be on a Sunday night, the NFC Championship game. It's going to be a 11:30 kickoff, so it's not going to finish till about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, just bear that in mind as well. But there'll definitely be an official meet-up for the NFC Championship game.
Great stuff. Looking forward to that. Better not speak too soon though, and tempt fate. But I think the confidence is there, isn't it? But I think that the game against the Packers could well be a bit of a cracker. I think, as you said, 2 young quarterbacks. We will talk about that in depth. So the two of you can go and do a little bit of a deep dive, I think, in this week. I think we should all brush up on the Packers. Because, as you said, Paul, I hadn't paid that much attention to them because they started the season so poorly. I don't think they were really in contention until they came through late at the end there, and scraped in as the 7th seed. But they've got some momentum behind them. So, yeah,
they have, but they are very inconsistent. They've never gone on a decent run of wins all season.
But we're not going to jinx it now, and we're not going to go down the rabbit hole. It's been difficult, Gareth, running the social media accounts because we've been cautious, but we have been saying to people. I've seen posts about Super Bowl meetups, and it's like, I nearly said it. It's well known that we used to do our own, but because if the Niners get there, we're confident there'll be things to be planned, and that's what we keep saying to people. Like, I keep getting invitations to local meetups, and I'm like, until I know who's in the Super Bowl, I'm not committing. And I think everybody's in the same boat, and it's the same with the 28th. Yeah. We appreciate not everybody's going to be able to get up to Leeds. We're not asking you to do that. We're just saying that the team have said this is what's going to happen, and once we know more information, we'll let you know. Lee was chuckling because this morning on my commute to Workley, one of the lads on Twitter, he sent me a message saying, divisional game, 2:30 kickoff. I looked at my phone and I thought, I'm pretty sure it's 11:30. So I started Googling. So I sends Lee the screenshot of what I find. And Lee's like, yeah, mate, we knew that last year. I was like, all right, just checking before I give the wrong information out. And like you said, the 11:30 time has worried a few people because obviously it's a Sunday. Most venues only have a late license, which is the casino. But I'm guessing the team already knew this, Lee, before they reached out and said this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's already organised. Yeah, it's already organised. So, and like I said to you on text as well, the Vikings meetup that was there for there at the same time as the Falcons game last year. Obviously, their game was the late game, and it went into I think it was 1:15, 1 o'clock in the morning. But because it was a private event, they were allowed to stay open.
Right. So once we know, we'll let you know. But it's the business end of the season, Gareth. It's all exciting. And keep those Dallas Cowboys memes going. We're in Packers week, but until we drop that pod at the end of the week, please drop them till your heart's content. And has anybody seen the footage of that well-known Dallas Cowboys fan throwing his jersey in the bin yet again? Skip Bayless, is it? How many jerseys has he gone through now?
Well, he threw
I haven't seen the Skip.
4 or 5 of them in the bin.
I did enjoy the obligatory Stephen A. Smith laughter. And I saw one where a guy just turned the TV off, but was quite emotional as he made his way out of his door with his wife going, "Are you all right, hon?" He's like, "I'm fine. I'm going to go here." Yeah,
Stephen Smith did a half-time one, Gareth, where he was pretty much laughing, and he tried to do the whole Not yet. I thought he's gone too early. He might have jinxed it, but yeah, keep those memes coming, everybody. It's great to see.
That's exactly what I had on my outro bit. You've stolen my thunder there. So, but it is an annual event, and we would miss it if we couldn't milk it. So, thank you, lads. I think that's pretty much covered everything. And thanks to everyone who listens and watches the show. We will be back to preview the divisional round, which will be, in case you've missed it, next Sunday morning at 1:15 a.m. So not on a school night. So I'm pleased the way that has fallen for us. So enjoy your week, and do enjoy those Cowboys memes, and go Niners.
Go Niners.
Bang, bang, Niner gang.
We love the San Francisco 49ers deep in the heart. Like Joe Montana in the corner, D. Clark. Garrison Hurst, stiff farm going 99. Don't get it twisted, one and all with prime time. John Taylor, Jerry Rice down the